Hey there, happy 2019. Welcome back to my channel. I am so sorry it's taken me so long to create this video for you guys. This is my tutorial on how I like to blend eyeshadow. I give you all my favorite tips and tricks on how to create flawless eyeshadow. I have broken this down into two parts. The first part is a look all on its own, if you would like, and it is using cream eyeshadow. Now I thought it was important to have a part that used cream shadows because I'm a huge fan. They create a contemporary, fresh look that's very easy, a little bit easier in my opinion than using powder. So I wanted to show you a super fast, easy smoky eye that looks nice and put together that can really build up blending skills. And technique is what this video is about. It's not really about the end look per se, as it is about the ways in which you can create many different looks. So it's all about the blending technique. The second half of the video, you'll see me create the look that I'm wearing right now in this introduction. And basically, I use powder shadows and I show you how I like to blend and some of my favorite ways of blending with powders. Keep in mind that good pigments and brushes can make a big difference in how easy it is to get a beautiful blend. I showcase some of my favorite tools in this video. However, the basics are the same, the techniques are the same. These are the building blocks from which to work and things to keep in mind as far as how to build up to create a flawless finished product. So if you would like to see my thoughts on blending, then just keep on watching. For this first part, we are starting off with a cream pencil. This is the Pat McGrath Labs Black Coffee pencil, and it's just a very lovely, deep brown, a little bit softer than going with a coal black. And with this, I am putting this into the waterline and letting it sort of overflow onto the lash line. The messier the better with this step. Now if it feels a bit uncomfortable, like you are getting really up into your lashes, then you're doing it right. We want it to be nice and seamless. Now at some point these cream products are going to dry down and set. And that's what gives it its long wear nature. That means we have a limited amount of working time. Don't worry about it being messy. Put it on the upper lash line as well. Now I'm going to use this really fabulous Danessa Myricks Color Fix cream product. I'm going to take a pinch of this and put it onto the back of my hand. And we want quite a large fluffy brush. I can't quite remember what brand this is. I think it's Up and Up. And I'm going to dab this into the product and swirl on the back of my hand in circular motions to make sure the product is being evenly distributed onto the brush and there isn't too much on the bristles. And with this, we're just going to start to brush it onto the lid, blending it into that liner we laid down. This is a really nice neutral beige nude. I'm patting this all over the lid and then making sure I don't have too much on the brush by removing the excess on the back of my hand. With a lighter hand, I'm sweeping this underneath the eyes as well. Once this sets, it's not going anywhere. And the motion I'm going in is just a light back and forth motion. Using the very tips of the bristles, we don't want to put too much pressure because that can create an uneven blend. Now that we're up by the crease, if you have hooded eyes, this is a really important step, especially. And you want to look straight ahead and blend. This is so that you can see exactly how the eyeshadow looks when your eyes are open, and we're creating a shadow that gives a bit more lift to the eye if you've got a little bit of sagging up right by the crease. You're trying to feel the socket line. You can use the brush to find your own socket line. That's the deepest part where the eye sinks in. And as you blend, you want to use the very tip of the brush and throw in some circular motions as well as some back and forth, just lightly feathering it. And as you start to get closer to the brow, you use less and less pressure. With a Q-tip, I'm going to take off the harsh lines by lightly dabbing along the edges. I can tell the product has already started to set because not a whole lot is coming off. This product does a really good job of blending itself in, but you can find some harsh lines even after kind of going over the edges with a Q-tip. So with a clean brush, just going over the edges before it sets is always a good idea. And if you wanted, you could take that same brush and dip into a little bit of concealer, and by a little bit I mean truly a tiny bit, and you can buff that into the underbrow area if you would like a brightening effect, or if you have discoloration there. That just cleans everything up a bit. Now I haven't put any mascara on or anything, just so we can flow naturally into our second look, which is with powders. And with powders, I do think that it takes a little bit more finagling and practice to learn how to properly blend them. Viseart Neutral Matte number 1 palette. This guy's a really great place to start because it provides building blocks for any looks. It's sort of a staple for me. I'm starting with a smaller fluffy brush. This is my Esom W36. Shape doesn't matter so much. And I'm going to start with a lighter shadow. I do tend to like to start with lighter shades and move on to darker shades to create nice gradients. But that being said, makeup is exactly that and can wash off, so there's a myriad of ways of working. I'm starting off with the lightest shade in my fluffy brush, and I'm going to lightly dust that underneath the brow. And sweep the brush back and forth in small motions using the very, very tip of the brush like we talked about earlier. Just back and forth, very, very light hand. And once most of the product has left the brush, I'm bringing it outside of the original decided parameters, so that as we place other shades, it'll overlap those edges and create a nice blend. Now let's say you just used an eyeshadow base like this NYX one without putting any cream shadows on. That's like how I normally work. Honestly, the only difference is now my primer is this dark shading that we've got going on. But otherwise it's pretty much the same because it's going to be a nice long wear look with eyeshadow primer or with the cream base that I put on. I'm going to take more of the light shade and lightly pat this onto the center of my look. This is a very flattering look for most eye shapes because it brings out the center of the eye and recesses the surrounding eye area and creates a lot of dimension. So by using a patting motion, I'm packing on more color. In the center, once all of that color has been deposited to the center of the look and there isn't too much left on the brush, I'm going to take this brush and do the same technique we did earlier which is light back and forth motions, barely putting any pressure. And by pressure, I mean the brush is not being pushed at an angle. The bristles are never being pushed at an angle and then sweeping. It's always keeping its own shape and using the lightest touch and going back and forth. Do you see how the bristles are always staying straight on? That's really important with blending, because whenever you push too hard, it creates a dragging effect and creates an uneven blend. It's not how brushes are meant to be used. So I'm using a very light amount of pressure and sweeping along the edges of the circle we created in the center. A really great eye look is to have this same lighter shade go from the very inner corner all the way through this area. But we're creating a halo eye. It's just a different look, but that other one is like a basic defined eye. Again, just patting that shade in the center. And by pushing it into the skin or into the primer base, you're ensuring that the pigment will last a very long time, as well as be nice and pigmented. So you want to push the product into the skin. And once most of it has been pushed in to the center, then you take a very light motion and sweep along the edges. You can throw in some circular motions if you like. I'm using mostly back and forth motions to be precise. With eyeshadow especially, I like to build up in slow, light layers of product. So I'm expecting to have to go back over and over again and intensify shadow and blend in between each layer. It just makes things easier. If you go in with a heavy hand all at once, it's going to be a lot harder to subsequently blend it out. So we've got the structure of our shadow. Now with a fresh small brush, this one is a Wayne Goss number 19, we're going to go into a nice medium shade. We're going to go into this one here, and then we're going to get darker and darker with our shadows. I'm just tapping off the excess powder so we don't get any drop down. You shouldn't get much drop down with most eyeshadow powders if you work in the way that I am working right now, which is pressing the pigment into the skin and then blending the edges. So press the pigment into the skin, into this outer third, and find the socket line. So just like how we did with the cream shadow, we're finding the socket line by feeling it with the brush. Where the brush naturally sinks into is where your socket line is. So push it in and then lightly blend the edges using little circular motions, little back and forth motions, barely putting any pressure onto the brush. And that feathers out the pigment. And don't be afraid to overlap this shade with our center lighter shade. So back and forth between the lighter shade and the darker shade, just blending by dragging the pigments back and forth. Creating a nice gradient. You don't need any special brushes. You can use any brushes you like, and as long as you're using this technique, you should be able to blend. So you just lightly sweep back and forth. You don't want anything too flimsy though. A lot of times people will choose a brush that's a little bit too soft. You want soft brushes, but if it's too soft, then you won't be able to pull the pigment from one place to the other. So lightly sweep along the top edge of the socket line as well. Just blending back and forth. And a good trick is actually to take a completely clean brush and generously go over the edges to create a nice gradient. I'm going to do the exact same thing to demonstrate blending some more with that same color, and I'm actually going to take a little bit of this color over here because it's a little bit cooler toned. Tap off the excess, and again press this into our hopefully still slightly tacky base of eyeshadow primer or cream base. Just press, 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 and then blend lightly back and forth along the edges. The top edge of this shape and the inner edge of where the light meets the dark. Whatever's left on the brush, I'm going to sweep along the entirety of the socket line to create some definition there. And I'm switching to my clean brush and blending again. So now we're blending that lightest shade we put up there and the area we put in the socket line, just so it all melts together, throwing in some circular motions. Now, a really great technique is the buffing technique, and what you need is either a loose powder or a pressed face powder, and you want it to be translucent so it doesn't change the look of your shadows. So I'm going to dip my completely clean brush into that loose powder and tap off the excess. It's now coated in that loose powder. I'm going to do the same thing but buff in little circular motions. It's all in the movements of your hand, right? So little circular motions like this, and just buff into the shades. And if you ever feel like you overdid it in the sparkle, the shine, if you want to take down any kind of shimmer that you feel like you put too much of, or if you feel like you're having trouble blending shades and making it look seamless, this is a really great way. It's a technique that people have been using forever to just create a flawless, smooth, velvety finish to both face products and eye products. And you don't have to worry about being heavy-handed with the powder. You can just buff it all out. Oh, and this brush, by the way, is the Esom W35. And that just gives this velvety, smooth finish. Now I want to increase the intensity, so I'm going to take an even deeper shade, this one over here, with my Wayne Goss. This one is my designated dark shade brush. This one is my designated clean or buffing brush, and this one is my designated light shade brush. With a high contrast look, I do like to work with 3 brushes and give them their designated jobs. And with every shade I go deeper, or if you're using, you know, purples, blues, pinks, any kind of bright tone, you want to get more and more precise the longer you work, so that you're creating this nice gradient effect. So I'm working in a smaller and smaller surface area, and again pressing the pigment in and then using little circular motions or back and forth motions, especially along the edges, to blend. And with this technique, you can create any shape you want on the eyes. You can go in swirl pattern to create some kind of special effects. You can create jagged lines. You can do a really overly defined eye like a drag look. You can do any kind of optical illusion as long as you have these basics of how to blend. One thing I've been noticing that people have been missing in their blending technique is the pressing part. I think a lot of my videos I'm just like, oh yeah, blend, and you see me sweeping the shadow, and that actually is misleading because the pressing part is so important to get the shadow to actually stick to the eye and to be exactly where you want it to be. Once you have that harshness, then you blend. Otherwise, if you're just kind of blending from the get-go, you'll never be able to do more than an ethereal, cloudy, smoky eye. Kind of like what we did at the beginning there. Having a painting background, I can't talk about blending and not address this one issue that I see over and over again in YouTube videos. So, let's talk color theory for a second. A lot of times people will try to pair bright colors together and they encounter issues while blending. They say that the colors become muddy, or they become grayed out, or they won't blend together. Sometimes it's the fault of the products, but more often than not, I find that it's a problem with the color story and what colors are being paired to create the blended or desired effect. When you try and blend, let's say, red and green, for example, let me just bring out my Viseart Brights. So if you're trying to blend, my lid is broken. Now if you're trying to blend something like red and green and you're having a hard time blending it out, chances are it's not necessarily your blending technique as it is your color choices. When you look at a color wheel, you want to blend shades that can create a color that you desire together. If you blend complementary shades like red and green, you are going to get brown, because that's what brown is made of. It's made out of blue and orange, or red and green, or yellow and purple. That shade in the middle is most definitely going to become brown. So a lot of times people are like, oh, it looks so muddy, but it's about the colors you're choosing. If you're trying to create a nice gradient and you want the shade in between to have a color that's not brown, you might want to pick something like purple and put that in between, so that when you go in with the red and the green, there's something in between that can create a nice gradient that has a lot of depth of color to it. Same thing, so like you want to blend purple and green. You want to think about the color wheel and what's in between green and purple. It's blue. So if you wanted to have green and purple blend nicely together, you would probably want to throw a blue in the center to give it a gradient that isn't going to create a muddied look. Sometimes with pigments like these, they're so good that even when you blend opposite colors or colors that are far from each other on the color wheel, they will still look vibrant and nice. But knowing the basics, knowing that you might need a third color in there, will make your looks so much more vibrant, so much more blended and smooth and more gradient. And now we can finish off the under eye. I'm going to take my IT brush number 124 and go into this warm brown shade right here to give a little bit of warmth to this look. And I'm going to blend starting from the outer edge, blending inward. I think that's an important thing to note when you're talking about the under eye, is starting from the outer edge. Wherever you first put your brush down is where most of the product is going to go, and it's a good note to keep in mind that on most eye shapes it is flattering to have the darkest area of the under eye be on the outer edge, so that we keep this inner part nice and open and seductive, and the outer edge is where we have the smoky party area. And the same blending technique goes, so you blend back and forth, except whenever you're smudging or buffing, you're putting a little bit more pressure onto the brush and pushing a little bit harder. And you want to do that with brushes that can handle it, that are denser. The denser the brush, the more it's meant for a buffing motion and for pressure. And the looser, the fluffier the bristles, the less pressure you're meant to put on them. And with my lighter shade designated brush, I'm just going to blend the lower edge. I might actually pick up a little bit of either the lighter shade or, like I am, the loose translucent powder, and swipe over that lower edge to create a nice soft gradient and blurred out effect. And with lighter shades, you can start from the center and move outward, because that's where we want the brightness to be, is the center. To finish off the look, I'm going to give the face a little bit of structure. Since this look is fairly modern, we want to keep things looking simple on the complexion as well. I'm taking my Ket Cosmetics in Mai Tai. These creams are truly beautiful, and it has a rosy tone to it. And this is my P55 Esom brush. I'm going to stamp this on, creating a nice blush. And just like how we blended the eyeshadow and made it nice and soft, I'm going to do the same thing with the cheeks. Using a fluffy brush, I'm going to dip into that translucent powder and blend. It just diffuses that blush color so beautifully, making the complexion look airbrushed. You want to be careful on complexion not to put too much powder, because it can look a bit heavy. But if you use this circular motion and just blend it all out without letting it sit too long on the skin, then you should be fine. For my look, I would like to see a little bit of mascara on the lashes. I'm also going to finish off with a lightweight lip. This is the Danessa Myricks Color Fix that we used at the beginning. And I'm going to just put a little bit of this on the lips. A dash of gloss. This is Bond, the Velvet Lip Glide from NARS. And the two of those together create the perfect soft lip to finish off our simple contemporary look. Alright guys, so my hope for this video is that it was helpful for you. Please leave a comment in the comment section down below letting me know your thoughts, as well as if you have any blending tips or tricks. Many of you guys are absolutely phenomenal with makeup. I would love to learn from you guys. And I hope you're having a fantastic start to the new year, and I love you lots, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys.